Let me tell you about Marcus. Marcus was my guy. We grew up on the same street, went to the same school, and ate at the same kitchen table so many times that his mom basically adopted me. When I got my first real job offer at 23, making more money than either of our dads had ever made in a single year, the first person I called was Marcus. And Marcus said, "Bro, don't let that change you." That's it. That's all he had. Don't let that change you. Not "that's incredible." Not "let's celebrate." Not "how did you do it? What can I learn?" Just a quiet little warning, dressed up as loyalty, that what I was about to do made him uncomfortable. I almost turned the job down. I'm dead serious. I almost turned it down because I didn't want Marcus to feel some way. And if I had done that, if I had let that moment slide, I would not be standing here talking to you right now. I'd probably still be on that street, doing the same thing Marcus is still doing, wondering why the world never gave me a chance. Here's what nobody tells you about friendship. Most people treat it like it's sacred. They think the length of time you've known someone is the same as the value they add to your life. And I get it, I really do, because loyalty feels like love, familiarity feels like safety, and cutting someone off feels like betrayal. Except here's the thing. The people who will cost you the most in your life will rarely be strangers. They won't be rivals or enemies or people who openly hate you. They'll be the ones sitting at your table, smiling at you, calling you their brother or their sister, and quietly, methodically, sometimes without even knowing they're doing it, they will steal your future right out from under you. Not with malice, just with mediocrity. Just with the slow, steady gravity of a life that has already decided it isn't going anywhere. And you need to hear this. You need to hear this because the research on social influence is ruthless. Dr. Nicholas Christakis at Yale has spent 2 decades studying social networks, and the data doesn't lie. If your 3 closest friends are overweight, you are 57% more likely to be overweight. If your 3 closest friends are financially struggling, your chances of financial struggle go up dramatically. If your 3 closest friends aren't growing, aren't learning, and aren't pushing, statistically you are not growing either. Not because you're weak, not because you lack willpower, but because human beings are social creatures who calibrate their sense of normal based on the people around them. What feels ambitious to you is almost entirely a function of what ambition looks like in your immediate circle. Read that again. Your ceiling is being set by the people you talk to most. That's not an opinion. That's neuroscience. So what does that actually mean for you? It means the friend who calls every big idea you have risky. It means the cousin who says you're always chasing something, like that's a character flaw. It means the group chat where everyone complains about their lives, but nobody does anything about it. It means the people who get quieter when you win and louder when you stumble. These aren't just annoying people. These are active obstacles to everything you say you want. And the question you have to ask yourself, the uncomfortable, stomach-turning question, is this: am I tolerating a friendship that's costing me my future because I'm afraid to be alone, or because I genuinely believe this person adds value to my life? Because those are 2 very different things, and only one of them is a reason to stay. Let's talk about what this actually looks like in practice, because this isn't abstract philosophy. This is real life. There are 5 types of friends you need to look at seriously, not to judge them as human beings, but to audit what they actually do to your trajectory. The first one is the comfort addict. This is the friend who has found a livable level of unhappiness, made peace with it, and now their entire identity is built around the idea that this is just how life is. They've got a job they hate, a relationship that's gone flat, dreams they stopped chasing around 26, and they've packaged all of that into a worldview that says be realistic. And they will invite you to be realistic with them every time you talk to them. Every business idea you float is too risky. Every career move you consider is too uncertain. Every big goal you set is a lot to take on. They're not evil. They're scared, but their fear is contagious, and if you're around it long enough, you will catch it. You will start to shrink your ambitions to fit the container of what they think is possible, and you won't even notice it happening. That's the most dangerous part. It doesn't feel like sabotage. It feels like wisdom. The second type is the scorekeeper. This is the friend who keeps a running tally of everything, and that tally only matters when you start winning. When you were both struggling, they were your biggest cheerleader. But the second the gap between your lives started to widen, something shifted. Now there's a little edge in their jokes. Now your wins get minimized, and your mistakes get amplified. Now they bring up old stories that keep you pinned to a version of yourself you've been working hard to outgrow. The scorekeeper doesn't want you to fail, exactly, but they don't want you to get too far ahead either, because your success makes them confront their own stagnation. And here's what that does to you, functionally. Research from the University of Michigan found that ambivalent relationships, the ones where you feel both supported and undermined, are actually more stressful on the body than clearly negative relationships. More stressful. A friend who sometimes builds you up and sometimes tears you down is literally harder on your nervous system than an enemy who's consistently against you. With the enemy, you can be on guard. With the scorekeeper, you never know which version you're going to get, and that uncertainty is exhausting in a way that slowly drains your capacity to take risks. The third type is the crisis magnet. This one is hard because we love these people. The crisis magnet is always going through something. Always. There's always a breakup, a financial emergency, a health scare, family drama, or a job disaster, and every single one of them requires your full attention, your energy, your time, and your emotional availability. And you give it because you're a good person. After all, you care. After all, that's what loyalty looks like. Except 6 months go by, and you realize you've given this person so much bandwidth that your own goals have gotten no traction. Your business idea is still just a note on your phone. Your finances are still a mess because you've been too emotionally drained to sit down and actually work through them. Your own relationships have suffered because you've been spending your best hours putting out fires in someone else's life. The crisis magnet isn't doing this on purpose. In fact, that almost makes it worse because there's nobody to be mad at, just a slow leak of everything you needed to pour into yourself, redirected into someone who never stops needing. The fourth type is the identity anchor. This is the friend who knew you before you started growing, before you started working on yourself, before you started taking your ambitions seriously. And they prefer that version of you, not because they're malicious, but because that version of you required less of them, challenged them less, and didn't make them feel like they were falling behind. So every time you evolve, they drag you back. They invoke the past. You used to be so chill. You've changed, man. Remember when you used to not care so much about all this stuff? And the thing is, they're right. You have changed. That's the whole point. You changed deliberately and strategically because the old you was not getting the results you wanted. The identity anchor is someone who loved who you were more than they want to see who you're becoming, and staying close to them means constantly fighting against the gravitational pull back to your worst habits, your old limiting beliefs, your smallest version of yourself. The fifth type, the one nobody talks about, is the well-meaning underminer. This is the parent, the sibling, the childhood best friend who genuinely loves you, but whose ceiling for you is the highest version of what they understand to be possible. They don't have a reference point for what you're trying to build. They've never seen anyone do it. So their advice, given with pure love, consistently steers you toward the most conservative option, the safest bet, the least volatile path. Get the stable job. Don't put everything into the business. Make sure you have a backup plan. And look, backup plans aren't inherently bad. But when everyone in your life is pushing you toward a backup plan before you've even fully committed to the main plan, what you get is someone who never really goes all in on anything, who always has one foot out the door, who sabotages their own momentum, because the people they love most keep implying that failure is the default. Now, here's what I want you to sit with for a minute. I can already hear some of you saying, "This sounds cold. This sounds ruthless. This sounds ruthless. This sounds like you're telling me to abandon people." I'm not. I'm telling you to audit. There's a massive difference. An audit doesn't mean deletion. It means getting honest about what's actually happening in each of these relationships. It means asking, after I spend time with this person, do I feel more capable or less capable? Do I feel like my goals are more possible or less possible? Do I feel energized or drained? Do I feel like the best version of myself or like a previous version I've been working to leave behind? These are the actual questions. Not how long have I known them, and not are they a good person at their core, because good people can still be the wrong people for where you're trying to go. Here's the data point that should make this land harder. According to a study published in the Journal of Consumer Research, when people are trying to develop new habits or achieve ambitious goals, peer influence accounts for somewhere between 45% and 65% of whether they follow through. Not individual discipline. Not willpower. Peer influence. Sun lives to about 78 years old. If you're in your 20s right now, you've got roughly 50 years left of your productive life. 50 years. Now imagine you've got one, maybe two people in your circle who are actively, even unconsciously, suppressing your growth. And imagine you spend 3 hours a week with each of them in conversations that go nowhere, in social situations that reinforce stagnation, in dynamics that drag you back to who you used to be. That's 6 hours a week. That's 312 hours a year. That's 15,600 hours over the next 50 years. 15,600 hours. That's 1,950 8-hour workdays. That's almost 7.5 years of full workdays spent letting the wrong people drain the right energy. And that's a conservative estimate. Now, what could you build in 7.5 years of full workdays if the energy wasn't getting siphoned off? What business would exist? What skills would you have? What version of yourself would you be? That's what we're actually talking about when we talk about cutting the friend you need to cut. We're not talking about being cold. We're talking about being honest about the compound cost of the relationships that aren't paying you back. Now here's where it gets hard, because knowing all this is easy. Knowing is always easy. The doing is where most people freeze. So let me give you what actually works, because I've done this multiple times. It is never clean, and it is never without pain, and it is always, without exception, worth it. The first thing to understand is that you don't owe anyone a dramatic breakup speech. The idea that cutting someone out requires a confrontation, an explanation, or a formal ending, that's mostly a story we tell ourselves to avoid starting the process. What actually works is the slow dial down. You stop being the one who initiates. You become less available. You start investing that energy elsewhere, in people who are building something, in communities organized around growth, and in relationships with people who are doing what you want to be doing. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does your social life. When you create space by stepping back from relationships that don't serve you, new ones fill in. But if you never create that space, the right people never have room to arrive. Most people wait for their circumstances to change before they change their environment. It's the other way around. Change the environment first, and watch how quickly everything else starts to shift. The second thing is that you have to get comfortable with being misunderstood. When you start to change, when you start showing up differently, investing your time differently, and becoming less available to the dynamics that used to define you, some people will take it personally. They will say you've changed as if it's an accusation. And you need to be able to hear that and not flinch, because yes, you have changed. That is the entire strategy. The goal was to change. The fact that your old environment is now uncomfortable with who you're becoming is the most reliable signal that the work is actually happening. When people who used to know you are confused by who you're becoming, that means the distance between who you were and who you're becoming is real and measurable. That's not a red flag. That's a milestone. The third thing, and this is the one I want you to really hear, is that this doesn't have to be about rejection. The most powerful thing you can do isn't to cut people off dramatically. It's to outgrow the dynamic. You can still love someone and refuse to let their limitations become your limitations. You can still care about someone and decline to participate in conversations and behaviors that reinforce the life you're trying to leave behind. You can be kind and warm and genuinely wish people well while simultaneously building a life that looks completely different from theirs. The separation doesn't have to be hostile. It just has to be real. What it cannot be is pretend. You cannot spend 3 hours a week in a group chat full of victimhood and negativity and expect it to not affect your mindset. You cannot have weekly conversations with someone who thinks your goals are unrealistic and expect those conversations to leave your belief in yourself untouched. The input shapes the output. It always does. Here's something I learned the hard way. For a long time, I thought I was strong enough to absorb it all. I genuinely believed I could stay close to people who weren't growing and somehow not be affected, because I had my goals, my discipline, and my drive, and surely that would be enough of a buffer. It wasn't. It never is. Because the effect isn't dramatic, it doesn't hit you all at once. It's incremental. It's one conversation where you walked away slightly less fired up than when you started. One night out that kept you from the early morning work session you needed. One moment of self-doubt planted by a thoughtless comment that took 3 days to shake. One risk you decided not to take because you just spent 4 hours talking to someone who had rationalized their way out of every risk they'd ever taken. The erosion is slow, but erosion always wins if you let it keep going. Now let's flip this, because I don't want you to leave here thinking this is only about loss. The other side of this conversation, the side that doesn't get enough airtime, is about what you gain. When you make real space in your life by stepping back from relationships that were costing you your future, and you fill that space deliberately and intentionally with people who are doing the work, something wild starts to happen. Your baseline for normal shifts. What feels like a crazy idea starts to feel like a reasonable goal because you're around people for whom it is. Your risk tolerance goes up because you're watching people take risks and land them. Your blind spots get challenged because you're in rooms where complacency isn't accepted. Your energy goes up because the conversations you're having are generative instead of circular. Your speed increases because you're getting information and perspective from people who are actually in the game, not just commenting from the stands. And here's the thing about those new relationships. They compound. Just like bad relationships compound against you, good ones compound for you. The right introduction, the right conversation, the right moment of honest feedback from someone who's already where you want to be have outsized value. A study in the Stanford Social Innovation Review found that 70% of jobs are found through networking, with most coming through weak ties, meaning people who aren't your close friends but move in different circles than you do. The people outside your current social bubble have connections, information, and opportunities your current circle doesn't because it's too similar to you. Every time you expand your social environment toward where you're trying to go, you are literally increasing your surface area for opportunity. You are making it statistically more likely that the right door opens, the right conversation happens, and the right collaboration gets started. I want to tell you one more thing, and then I want you to sit with it. The friends who are worth keeping, even the imperfect ones, even the ones who are struggling, are the ones who, when you show up as the growing version of yourself, celebrate it. They might be scared. They might be processing their own feelings about the gap opening up between your paths. But their ultimate response to your growth is love, not quiet resentment. It's encouragement, not warnings. It's curiosity, not competition. There are people in your life right now who are not operating at the level you're trying to reach, who are genuinely in your corner, who would run through walls for you if you needed it, who want to see you win even if they haven't figured out how to win themselves yet. Those people are not the problem. Those people are the ones you bring along. You don't leave them. You invest in them. You model what's possible, and you pull them up as you go. The people you need to step back from are the ones whose response to your ambition is consistently to shrink it. That's the line. Are they celebrating you or managing you down? Marcus and I barely talk anymore. Not because I ended the friendship with a speech or a confrontation. Just because I started investing my time differently, and we had less and less to talk about once I stopped participating in the dynamic that used to define us. That's not a tragedy. It's just reality. Two people going different directions will naturally create distance without anyone being a villain. I genuinely wish him well. I hope he finds what he's looking for. But I also know that staying close to that relationship as it was would have cost me things I can never get back. I chose my future over my comfort, and I would make that choice 1,000 times over. The friend you need to cut isn't necessarily a bad person. They might be one of the most genuinely good people you know. But good and right for where you're going aren't the same thing, and confusing them is one of the most expensive mistakes you will ever make. Your circle is your culture is your ceiling, and your ceiling is where your life stops or starts, depending on what you do next. So the question isn't really about them, it's about you. What are you willing to protect? What future are you willing to fight for? What version of yourself are you committed enough to become that you'll make the uncomfortable choices, have the hard conversations, absorb the misunderstandings, and step into the uncertain space between who you've been and who you're becoming? Because that space exists. That space is real. And the only way to inhabit it fully is to stop letting people who've never been there tell you it isn't worth the trip. You already know what you need to do. The only thing left is to do it.